Welcome to the Brilliant Fertility Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Rose, and this podcast exists to help illuminate the path ahead of you. With expert interviews, clinical pearls, and real client success stories, my intention is to bring you hope for what's possible on this journey and to give you tools and resources to navigate the ups and downs on the road before you. If you find this podcast helpful, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite listening platform. And I have a big request. If you have a minute, can you leave us a 5-star review? And let us know, what did you learn? What did you come away with? Did you leave with that spark of hope? This helps more people like you find the podcast. My mission is to support as many humans as possible on their path to become parent. And by you sharing and subscribing, you're part of that mission too. And I'm so grateful for you for being here. Welcome back to the Brilliant Fertility Podcast. This is an exciting episode for me. I am talking about age this week, and I was inspired by the fact that I am turning 39 this month. And while 39 itself might feel like it's not the big 4-0, right? But it's close enough to me, and it's not, I really don't believe that age is such a huge factor. And so I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about, what do we focus on at this age? Like, what's different now than it might have been in 20s or early 30s? Because there are some really impactful changes that we can make to improve fertility outcomes. And most importantly, I want to start with mindset. I want to start with the mental piece of this, because when we get to this phase of life, on one hand, we've probably achieved quite a lot. I know a lot of the clients I work with are coming to me, the average age of the people I work with is 38. They're coming to me, they've already achieved a lot of their life goals. They've accomplished so much within their career. They've met the person that they want to start a family with. They have the house, and they start thinking about starting a family. And there's a couple different directions that this can go, right? On one hand, they can think, gosh, like, I've waited so long. Like, what if this doesn't happen? What if I waited too long? What if now I'm too old? Or maybe they start trying, they think like, oh, this is going to be easy. Like, I'm going to stop birth control, pull the goalie, it'll be one and done. And then months go by, and then they start to wonder, what am I missing? And then head down the track of, did I wait too long? What we know about fertility is that it doesn't just drop off a cliff. At one time, there was this misconception that something happened at 35 years old and everything just plummeted. And that's really not true. There is a slow decline in the late 30s of the number of eggs that are left in the ovary. It's about the only thing that we know to be true. Research has shown that, potentially egg quality declines as well, and that there's more genetic errors in the DNA of the eggs that are remaining by late 30s, early 40s. So there's certain things that we don't have control over, right? We can't actually control the fact that time is passing. We can't control age. We can't control gender. We can't control race. But what about our modifiable risk factors of what we eat, how we perceive stress, how we sleep, what we put on our body, and some of the toxins that we are potentially exposed to, we have control over. And when I talk about the mental piece being one of the most important to start with, it's because this is really where we get to set a foundation for our approach through the rest of this journey, however it's going to play out. And getting to this phase of life, I hope that if you are there, you're already starting to feel that freedom of giving zero fucks about what anyone else thinks. But that's not always the case, right? And so many of the clients that I work with, especially when we're doing our deep dives with hypnosis and we're releasing the perfectionism and the people pleasing, there is still a lot wrapped up in what other people think and what that can look like is hearing other people say, gosh, don't you think you're too old? Don't you think that it's, that you should just focus on other things in life? Or like, what if you maybe you should just adopt? All these other opinions are ultimately other people's, they're not yours. And you know what? You're allowed to put your blinders on and not listen to them. As uncomfortable as that may sound, because maybe you were raised to, you know, be really thoughtful and to listen to what other people have to say. And the thought that you would not take someone else's opinion into account is like, oh my gosh, but does that make me a bad person? Does that make me not a nice person? And right here, right now, I just want to give you permission to tune it all out. Tune out other people's opinions, tune out other people's expectations, because you want to focus on the life that you want to live. And taking advice and opinions from other people who are not living your life will inevitably lead to making decisions that you end up second guessing, that don't feel intuitively, soulfully right for you. If you're watching on YouTube, you might get a glimpse of our new kitty behind me who's really coming into his own, getting into all sorts of mischief. He's jumping in my bag over here. Anyway, we won't edit that out because, part of our brand is releasing perfectionism. And this is real life shit over here. And it's all good. So that's the number one piece of the mental advice that I would have is tune out other people's opinions. The second piece is to drop comparison. Now, you may know someone who decided they wanted to get pregnant at 39, stopped birth control, got pregnant the next cycle, and was like, woohoo, that was so easy. And you might know someone who it took 3 rounds of IVF. At the end of the day, comparing your journey to anyone else's isn't going to do anything for you or them. Uh, there's that phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. And in my experience, that's very true. Everyone's path is going to look different, and that's okay. The sooner you can drop that urge to compare yourself and your journey to anyone else's, the better. And I realize that might be easier said than done. It can take some practice. It takes a lot of self awareness to realize when you are going down that comparison path, when you are going down, maybe victim mentality. That's another piece that is really important to build that awareness around is that's in my number 3 is noticing when you start to hear yourself as the victim, when you start to put yourself in the victim shoes. Why does this happen to me? Why does this have to be so hard for me? How we can start to flip that is by just very gently entering into curiosity. And I've talked about curiosity in several episodes. Please go back to the beginning if you're like, wait, what? Did I miss something really big? Yeah, the curiosity is a big one. And when we're in that place of victim mentality and we're almost like resistant to leave it too, because this is the comfort zone right now. But getting curious and just saying, all right, like I kind of see what I'm doing. It doesn't feel good. I'm not quite sure how to get out of it, but asking a curious question is that first step towards being empowered and not so much taking control, because so much of this journey is about surrendering control, but taking stock of what you truly have influence over and taking responsibility for yourself. So asking a curious question like, what am I meant to learn from this journey? Who am I meant to become? And that will lead to building more resilience. We don't know what this path is going to bring. We don't know how long it's going to take. We don't know the exact when or how your children are going to come into being on this planet. But when we can actively choose to find the good in life, to find the glimmers, to find the joy, to find hope, this is a discipline. It requires attention, but it's 1000% worth putting attention towards. Okay, next up, I want to talk about the physical elements. So, by physical, I mean like how do we nourish our physical body? And what's different now at the age of 39 than it might have been at 25 or 30? I do have a bit longer of a list of the physical elements that I look to support in this age group. And it ultimately starts with getting a proper workup because there are a lot of areas that we could support. There's a lot of potential supplements that we could use. And now is when we really want to narrow in and be targeted in what we're supporting because not everyone needs to focus on everything. That tends to lead to overwhelm and frustration and just feeling more stuck. So, number one is getting a proper workup. This is for everyone. This isn't just for people who have been struggling to conceive. This is anyone who is thinking about wanting to conceive at the age of, 37, 38, 39, 40. Let's be proactive about this because the last thing I would want is for someone to wait until they've been trying for 6 months or a year or 2 years, then have some tests run and realize, like, oh shit, there was some stuff that we could have been supporting. So when we are proactive in our testing, we are saving time, money, and so much frustration down the line. I have a lab guide that you can download for free that includes all of the standard blood tests that I run. It's going to look more expansive than what you see at, a primary care GP, even most REIs. They're running the bare minimum that they would need to understand how someone might respond to IVF and if IVF is appropriate. But beyond that, it's not root cause medicine and is not proactive. So I'll link the download in today's show notes, and that will give you the list of what I look for when in the cycle we're testing it, what that value represents, and what is an optimal range, not just what is just like narrow or, wide window that we tend to see on the reference ranges. There is a more narrow optimal range that I'm looking for optimizing fertility. Number two is mitochondrial support. You can go back and listen to the episode with Dr. Kalia Wattles. This is a great one. She's like the mitochondria queen. I don't know if I know anyone who loves talking about mitochondria as much as her, but it truly is important because the mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell. They produce our ATP, which is our cellular energy, and our ovaries have a very high concentration of mitochondria, potentially even higher than the heart. So they play a huge role in ovarian health, impacting egg quality and supporting progesterone production, which are two incredibly important things for fertility. And you can go back to that episode with Dr. Wattles to learn more about how we support mitochondria, how we test for understanding our mitochondrial health. But these are really important pieces to support as we get to that over 35 age range, or potentially have had exposures to COVID. Certain chemical exposures will disrupt mitochondrial function as well. So there might be other factors that I'm working up regardless of age. Number three is blood sugar and insulin regulation. So I don't know about you. I was in my 20s and I was a busy medical student. And then in my early days of practice, like I was not always the most intentional about getting 3 meals a day. If I was busy, like I would down a protein shake and call that my meal. And looking back, my goodness, like I wonder why my periods were so irregular. Gone are the days of skipping meals or relying on like a plain bowl of oatmeal to carry you through the day. Maintaining healthy blood sugar is vital for regulating your stress hormones and reducing oxidative stress. So when we have too low of blood sugar, we tend to see our stress hormones rise in response to that in order to get our blood sugar up. When we have too high of blood sugar, that creates an environment in which not only are we going to pump out more insulin, creating insulin resistance, we also have a situation where we create more oxidative stress and we end up with what are called AGEs, advanced glycation end products, which create more damage to our little cells, our little structures like the ovaries, the follicles. And regulating blood sugar is very much dependent upon, number one, the individual, their genetics, but it also is impacted by our sleep, our circadian rhythm, the toxins that we've been exposed to, and how our body is detoxing those. So, the other elements that I'll mention are also going to be supportive of regulating blood sugar and insulin levels. Number four is movement. So, again, movement will help with regulating your blood sugar, especially if you take a few minutes after a meal to go for a gentle walk. But moderate and consistent movement, this means walking, yoga, strength training, dancing, gardening. There's like all movement counts. It does not have to be like some prescribed exercise program that makes you miserable. Like find movement that brings you joy, but allows for improvement of circulation. Like we want to get circulation to the uterus, to the ovaries. And when I say in moderation, there is some evidence to show that excessive exercise can increase the time to conception, but lack of exercise, a sedentary lifestyle, also increases the time to conception. So if we want to decrease the time to conception, if we want to increase the chances of a healthy pregnancy, getting regular, consistent movement truly is so important. Number five is sleep and circadian rhythm. Good quality, deep sleep. This is so underrated. I'm hearing a little bit more about it and having more discussions with other providers about the importance of doing a proper questionnaire when it comes to sleep and understanding if someone is getting enough deep sleep. But deep sleep allows us to repair our tissue and build our hormones properly. Like, for example, growth hormone is formed while we are in deep sleep. And that impacts egg quality, impacts our tissue repair, impacts our aging process. And the timing of light and dark exposure, that circadian rhythm, what we're exposed to over 24 hours of light and dark, impacts our mitochondria, our blood sugar and metabolism, our energy, and our hormone production. So sleep and circadian rhythm, they're not exactly the same thing, but they've influenced each other so much and they influence all these other factors in the body that can optimize hormones. So I have a guide for sleep and circadian rhythm. That's in the show notes as well. It's 10 steps to optimize your sleep and rhythm. And it's very practical steps that will allow you to really get the most out of your sleep. Now, of course, if you have deeper issues with sleep, this is one of the most common things that I work with hypnosis with people for. And at some point, I will go through some of the case studies with sleep and hypnosis. It's just been fascinating to see what the subconscious obstacles to good quality sleep are for people. But you absolutely, that's an area to put some focus on if you struggle with sleep, if you get less than 6 hours of sleep, if you feel like you're sleeping enough, but you're waking groggy, you don't have good energy throughout the day, you wake up with headaches, we need to be having conversations around this. Right. Number 6 is toxin avoidance. Now, there's a lot of things that we couldn't have controlled, right? Like while we were growing up, like the air we were breathing, the water we were drinking, like we didn't have control over that. And I do want to be mindful that without obsessing over this, we want to reduce the level of endocrine disruptors that we are exposed to. Plastics, pesticides, phthalates, parabens. These are all potentials that can impact our hormonal function, how we produce our hormones, how the hormones bind to receptor sites, our DNA. And while there's still things that we can't control, like we can start to look at the makeup that we're using, the products that we're putting on our body, the type of water filter that we're using. And it doesn't mean you need to do thousands of dollars of overhaul of your home and products, but it can mean that you can start to learn. And when you know better and you do better, even a 1% change can make such a huge impact. And I've had patients over the years who, we've gone through this list, and reasonably speaking, they were only really able to focus on one area of a time, which is absolutely okay. We don't have to do all of this at once. It's perfectly sustainable, and we'll get results to just zero in on one area, get really solidly confident there, and then move on to the next. So I've had patients who only focused on toxin avoidance. And over the course of 1 year, 2 years, the level of energy they have, their skin clearing up, their digestion improving, their cycles regulating is just incredible to witness. And this isn't with having to do like some crazy, $1,000 30-day detox that, cleanses everything and doesn't have any actual evidence behind it. This is truly just about knowing like what exists in our environment and what we can modify. So I'm going to leave us there because I know like, whew, that was kind of a drinking from the water hose 25 minutes. And we'll have a part 2 where I'm going to be reviewing what we focus on at this stage, emotionally and spiritually, next week. I hope that you can take one piece away from today, whether that's on the mental side or the physical side, to start to bring that awareness to. And regardless of your age, if you are here listening, I have a feeling it is because there's something here for you. There's some little tidbit of learning that was meant for you, or maybe something much more profound. And I believe that if you are listening, that you are not too old. 39 certainly isn't too old. I'm more fertile now at almost 39 years old than I was at 25 years old, when I wasn't even ovulating, when I wasn't even getting periods, when I had so much inflammation that my poor face was just like broken out in this horrible cystic acne. So there is a lot that can occur that is just absolutely amazing in the body in our late 30s and our early 40s that is still absolutely supportive of pregnancy. So if you are still having a period, if you ovulate, then it's not too late. If you are having irregular cycles and you're not ovulating, then let's get a full workup. That's number 1 of our physical. We want that full, proper workup. So take a peek at the show notes. We've got those 2 downloads there for you today, where you can learn more about what labs I order. You can learn more about how to support your sleep and circadian rhythm. And stay tuned for next week. We'll get into part 2, where we're diving into the emotional and spiritual pieces that I support at this phase of life on the fertility journey. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. Thank you for listening. I'm sending you so much love. And if you'd like to take a moment to leave us a review, give us a rating, it helps get this podcast in front of more people. It is my goal to have as many people listening as possible who have this vision for creating a better world, a world where we have more love, more compassion, and creating this ecosystem where this generation of children who is coming through you have this beautiful, loving planet to live on. Until next time.